The phone buzzed against the nightstand. Leo answered it on the second ring. He heard Julian's strained voice on the line. The words were sharp and urgent. Julian was at the Meridian Hotel in room 2203. He needed the new advanced suppressants. Leo understood the situation immediately. This was Julian's difficult time of the month. His boss endured this period like a monk. The cycle always hit him with vicious force. Leo promised he would be there in 10 minutes. He ended the call and moved quickly. Leo grabbed the emergency suppressants from a drawer. He shoved them into his messenger bag. Then he sprinted towards the parking garage. He felt a strange twitch in his eyelid at the hotel door. This was never a good sign for him. Before he could knock, the door flew open. A searing hot hand yanked him inside. The room was completely dark and silent. Felt like stepping into a vast void. A single ember from a cigarette glowed faintly. The small red light was eerie and unsettling. Leo instinctively tried to pull back. The hand on his wrist tightened its grip. He stumbled forward into Julian's arms. The heat radiating from Julian was intense. Leo's face collided with something solid. A jolt shot through his entire body. He struggled to create some distance, but he could barely move an inch away. Two strong hands were locked around his waist. They felt like they were forged in fire. Leo remembered Julian's sensitive cycle. A high fever was a very common symptom. He worried Julian was delirious from the heat. Leo quickly fumbled for the suppressants. He asked if Julian needed help with the injection. Julian remained silent in the darkness. His expression was impossible to see. Leo grew anxious and tapped his arm. Suddenly, he was spun around completely. The world tilted in a confusing blur. Then a sharp pain pierced the back of his neck. Julian had mistaken him for an Omega. Leo was just an ordinary Beta. He wanted no part in this kind of drama. He did not want to be a replacement. Leo began to struggle with all his might. The arms around him were like welded steel. He shouted in a panic-stricken voice. He told Julian to look closely at him. He yelled that his name was Leo, a Beta. The painful pressure on his neck vanished. The powerful arms around him finally released. Julian's deep voice sounded oddly wounded. He apologized for his feverish mistake. He asked for the suppressants. Leo hesitated for a moment and then complied. He handed over the small medical kit. Julian asked for one more favor. The hotel room lights suddenly turned on. Julian's dress shirt was mostly unbuttoned. Only the bottom two buttons remained fastened. His sculpted abdomen was fully visible. Leo quickly looked away from the sight. He took a deep breath to compose himself. He asked what else Julian needed from him. Julian opened his arms slightly. He asked if Leo could just hold him. He explained it was for psychological comfort. The tall man sat on the edge of the bed. His shoulders slumped in a rare display of weakness. He resembled a large, abandoned dog. This vulnerability matched textbook descriptions. Alphas were emotionally fragile during this time. But Leo knew you could not trust an alpha. Julian offered him a full month's bonus. Leo fought the temptation and politely refused. He said that it would be inappropriate. Julian's entire demeanor seemed to fall. A wave of pity washed over Leo. Julian silently rolled up his own sleeve. He exposed the pale skin of his inner arm. Leo sighed softly and opened the kit. He disinfected the area with a quick swipe. The needle slid into the vein smoothly. He disposed of the used medical supplies. Leo asked if he should call a car for Julian. Julian always spent these periods at home. He never stayed in a hotel overnight. This was a significant break from routine. Leo expected him to agree immediately. Instead, Julian simply shook his head. He said he would not be going home. Something about this felt wrong to Leo, but it was not his place to question it. Leo nodded professionally. He would arrange for dinner to be sent up. All important work would be sent digitally. He prepared to leave the hotel room. As he turned, Julian grabbed his jacket. He asked to borrow the blazer. Julian avoided making any eye contact. He mumbled that his own shirt was ruined. His video conference was in the afternoon. Leo understood the professional need. He took off his blazer and left it on a chair. He told Julian he was returning to the office. Julian gave a low, affirmative sound. Leo walked out without looking back. He was in the hotel lobby when he realized there was a significant size difference. Julian was much taller and broader than him. There was no way his blazer would fit. The image of Julian ruining a meeting flashed in his mind. His comfortable six-figure salary was at risk. Leo abruptly changed his direction. He walked quickly to the nearest shopping mall. The mall had Julian's preferred luxury brand. He bought a full suit with Julian's card. This card was for Julian's private expenses. Before leaving, he saw a small toy shop. The store sold comfort items for Omegas. Soft, fluffy dolls filled the window display. He thought of Julian's dejected posture. He remembered the request for a hug. When he came to his senses, he was holding a doll. It was a rabbit with a soft pink scarf. Felt incredibly soft to the touch. He was a very considerate employee. Leo walked back towards the hotel. He stood once more before room 2203. Again, the door opened before he could knock. Julian asked why he had come back. His voice was hoarse with a raw edge. Leo handed him the new suit and the doll. He explained their sizes were too different. He said the doll was a free gift from the store. Julian raised an eyebrow at the explanation. He took the suit and placed it on a table. The plush rabbit was tossed onto the bed. Leo felt a strange flicker of unease. Something was definitely not right here. Julian turned and walked back towards him. Leo finally understood the problem. Before, Julian had been somewhat presentable. Now he was completely disheveled. The unique scent in the air was stronger. Leo could feel his ears turning red. This situation was highly inappropriate. He took a step back and averted his gaze. He asked Julian to please return his jacket. He said he would leave if there was nothing else. Julian replied quickly, his voice still rough. He claimed the jacket was sweaty. He promised to have it cleaned and returned. Then he shut the door before Leo could respond. Leo caught a glimpse of his blazer. It was folded neatly on the arm of a sofa. It did not look dirty at all. His face flushed with confusion. He shook his head, trying to clear his thoughts. This was Julian, the untouchable man of their industry. Leo drove back to the office. He focused on preparing for the afternoon meeting. The advanced suppressants worked wonders. Julian appeared perfectly normal on the video call. However, Leo's own dizziness was getting worse. Before he could rest, his phone rang again. It was Julian, thanking him for his hard work. He gave Leo a 3-day paid vacation. Leo's eyes lit up at the news. He wanted to race home immediately. He politely mentioned the pending resort project. Julian interrupted him, his tone firm. He said the resort project was on hold. He commented that Leo looked pale earlier. He told him to rest and be good. Then he promised another month's bonus. The call ended. Leo touched his slightly warm ear. A sudden, sharp pain pulsed in his temple. He decided to go home right away. After 3 days, his symptoms finally faded. He returned to the office feeling refreshed. A colleague stopped him in the break room. She heard Julian spent his cycle with an Omega. Leo's heart skipped a beat. He resisted the urge to ask for details. A thought surfaced in his mind. Had the protagonist Omega finally appeared? He looked down, pouring a glass of water. He stated that it was Julian's private life. His colleague leaned in conspiratorially. She whispered that everyone thought he and Julian. Leo looked up sharply, his gaze intense. He warned her to be careful with her words. He and Julian had a purely professional relationship. He was determined not to be a side character. He would not be part of their love story. Suddenly, Julian's deep voice came from behind. He called Leo to his office. Leo quickly picked up his coffee and followed. Julian pointed to a stack of files. He wanted Leo to review trainee applications. He needed a report in 1 hour. Leo nodded, confused by the request. Julian rarely involved himself in HR matters. This was unusually out of character. Still, he began the work immediately. Half an hour later, he presented the sorted resumes. Julian glanced at each one for a few seconds. He was only looking at the names. It seemed strange not to check their skills. Soon, the reason became clear. Julian pulled one resume from the pile. He told Leo to hire this person tomorrow. The position was an assistant in the main office. Leo would be his direct supervisor. Leo's breath caught in his throat. He looked down at the paper. The name was Lucas, male, Omega. He graduated from a prestigious university. Leo had known this was coming. The fated Omega would appear eventually. But the reality left him feeling hollow. He was just reluctant to lose his job. He loved his high salary and his good boss. He composed himself and picked up the phone. He called the number on the resume. He congratulated Lucas on his new position. He asked him to arrive at 9 tomorrow. A warm voice on the other end thanked him. After hanging up, Leo clenched his fist. He did not realize it until a colleague knocked. His palm was red and indented. The next day, Lucas arrived on time. Leo took him to the HR department. The HR manager, a woman named Liz, stopped them. She gave Leo a knowing, teasing look. She had heard he spent 3 days with the boss. Before Leo could speak, Lucas cut in. He introduced himself to manager Liz. Leo turned to look at the new employee. The friendly smile on Lucas's face was gone. His eyes were dark and serious. A cold feeling washed over Leo. The story was forcing him into this role. He was the jealous, interfering third party. He quickly tried to explain the situation. He said Julian was not with him. He also said Julian had always preferred Omegas. Lucas's expression grew even stranger. Thankfully, Liz was a perceptive person. She quickly smoothed things over. She said it was all a misunderstanding. She led Lucas away to complete his paperwork. Later, Leo helped Lucas settle at his new desk. The internal office phone rang. Julian's slightly distorted voice came through. He asked Leo to bring Lucas to his office. Leo's lips tightened as he quietly agreed. Inside, Julian gestured for Leo to leave. He nodded and returned to his own desk. He watched the numbers on his computer screen. Time had never seemed to move so slowly. He sighed and forced himself to focus. He dove into his complex workload. Much later, Julian and Lucas appeared at his desk. Julian held out a set of car keys. He said that Lucas was very important to him. Leo's hand tightened around the keys. His knuckles turned white from the pressure. Julian told him to drive Lucas home. Leo agreed and led the way to the car. He was stunned when Lucas gave the address. He lived in the penthouse next to Julian's. Lucas broke the silence in the car. He asked Leo what he was thinking about. Half an hour later, they arrived. Lucas unbuckled his seatbelt. He thanked Leo for the ride. He invited him inside for a cup of tea. Perhaps the summer heat had addled his brain. To his own surprise, Leo said yes. Lucas showed him to the sofa. Leo's eyes scanned the apartment. He saw a familiar object on the balcony. His own jacket was hanging there to dry. The pink-scarfed rabbit doll was on a table. Leo bit his tongue, the pain grounding him. He told himself they were just similar items. It had to be a coincidence. But his self-deception shattered with Lucas's words. Lucas said Julian asked him to return the jacket. There was no doubt about who he was. Leo stiffly accepted the folded blazer. He left without another word. Back home, he sat on his sofa for hours. His fingers traced the lapel of the jacket. He raised it to his nose. A sweet scent filled his senses. It smelled like cherry wine. He had noticed it near Lucas. It was nothing like a beta's scent. A bitter smile touched Leo's lips. He had hidden his feelings for Julian for years. He never dared to cross the line. He thought he could endure it. But a single jacket and a lingering scent had broken him. His phone rang, startling him. It was Julian, asking if he was home. Leo's voice was flat. He asked if there were other tasks. Julian chuckled softly on the other end. He said there was nothing urgent. He was taking Lucas to the resort meeting. He told Leo to rest well over the weekend. An empty feeling settled in Leo's chest. He mumbled an okay and hung up. He threw the blazer into the trash can. Perhaps it was truly time to leave. This thought was soon confirmed. Julian added Lucas to the project's group chat. He instructed everyone to transfer their files. Leo's fingers hovered over his keyboard. He finally managed to type a single word. Okay. A junior colleague sent him a private message. He was confused about the sudden change. He said the project had always been Leo's. He complained that this was unfair. Leo read the indignant messages. The bitterness inside him swelled. Even his new trainee knew this was wrong. Julian had to know what this meant. Leo typed a reply with numb fingers. He told his colleague to delete his messages. He said to follow the boss's orders. The colleague sent a few angry emojis, then complied. Leo put his phone aside. He compiled all the project data. He sent the package to Lucas. At the same time, he wrote his resignation letter. He did not submit it immediately. Julian would surely ask questions now. It was best to wait until he was too busy. The next 4 days were normal. The only difficult part was the daily routine. He saw Lucas get out of Julian's car each morning. Packing his apartment distracted him. Friday afternoon arrived quickly. Julian called Leo into his office alone. He said he had heard the rumors. He told Leo not to overthink things. He promised Leo's bonus would be safe. He said there were other reasons for taking Lucas. Leo simply nodded his head. He said everything was for the company. Julian frowned at his placid reaction. He continued to explain himself. He said Leo would always be the most important. No one could ever surpass him. The words went in one ear and out the other. Leo smiled and agreed with everything. Julian had already made his choice. The Alpha could not resist his fated Omega. He took one last look at Julian. He returned to his desk to finish his work. By the time he left the building, it was dark. This did not stop his plan. He was leaving the city tonight. He sat on the train to his hometown. He blocked every contact in his phone. Then he reviewed his personal finances. He could live for 3 years without working. At 1 in the morning, he reached the small town. He tidied up his old bedroom. Then he fell into a deep, troubled sleep. He felt alternating waves of heat and cold. He woke up covered in sweat. A persistent knocking came from the front door. He shook his groggy head and went to look. Through the peephole, he saw a thin man. The man held a bottle of cheap liquor. The man asked if he was the new neighbor. He commented that he smelled good. Leo frowned and told him to leave. He threatened to call the police. The man muttered something and walked away. A deep sense of unease settled over Leo. He encountered that same man 3 more times that day. The constant threat made him act. He found an agent and bought a secure condo. He could move in after a week. But this purchase drained most of his savings. He could no longer afford to be idle. He decided to try making content online. He would use animation to tell a story. It was the story of his 9-year crush on Julian. He started writing the script immediately. He and Julian never spoke in high school. A studious senior had no time for him. But one event had changed everything. It was the summer after his parents died. His grades plummeted. Teachers and relatives offered their advice. They told him to be strong for his parents. They told him to focus on his studies. His grades only continued to fall. His grief became an inconvenience to others. Someone commented on his test scores publicly. He said Leo was embarrassing his dead parents. Before Leo could respond, a voice cut in. It was a handsome, cold-faced student. He asked if they were proud of their cruelty. He challenged them to do better themselves. Leo later learned that was Julian. After that day, no one bothered him again. Even his greedy relatives disappeared. He found out the school had provided legal aid. It was a charity project from Julian's family. He wanted to thank the year head. The man said Leo was just lucky. With this new piece, Leo began to heal. He hired a tutor to catch up on his studies. The best tutors were very expensive. He called a well-known agency. They called back 3 days later. They said a top tutor was available. The price was surprisingly affordable. But when he went to pay, they stopped him. They told him the fee was waived. The owner had reviewed his application. He believed in Leo's potential. He wanted Leo to be a success story. Everything felt so lucky after meeting Julian. He studied hard for a whole year. He was accepted into Julian's university. He even got into the same program. He found Julian on the school's online forum. Julian was a top student and a prime alpha. He was very popular on the forums. Leo easily found all his public information. He liked every single post that praised Julian. On the first day, this came back to haunt him. The university had a strange registration policy. He had to register his forum account. The person handling his registration was Julian. Julian read his history out loud. He said, "Wants to be Julian's dog." Leo felt dizzy with embarrassment. He tried to claim it was an accident, but there were hundreds of accidental likes. Thankfully, Julian did not press the issue. He finished the registration quickly. Then he took Leo's heavy suitcase. He started walking towards the dorms. Leo hurried to catch up with him. He insisted on carrying his own bag. Julian stopped abruptly. Leo walked right into his firm shoulder. He saw stars for a brief moment. Julian used a tissue to wipe sweat from Leo's nose. He said he would be happy to be of service. Leo's brain felt even more muddled. He dumbly nodded and followed him. This became his excuse to get closer. Julian would bring him lunch. They studied together in the library. They took evening walks on campus. Julian only drank the water Leo brought for him. Leo thought perhaps Julian liked him back. A club dinner solidified his decision to confess. A sudden disturbance broke out at the restaurant. An alpha at another table went into a rut. All the alphas and omegas at their table reacted. As a beta, Leo should have been fine. But when he stood up, his vision went black. The last thing he remembered was Julian's worried face. He woke up in a private hospital. It was one owned by Julian's family. Julian was leaning over him. His warm breath fanned across Leo's face. Leo quickly looked away, his face burning. Julian said his fever had finally broken. The doctor said he was affected by the pheromones. Julian gently pinched his cheek. He promised it would have no lasting effects. He said that he would be there no matter what. Leo's heart pounded in his chest. After leaving the hospital, he planned his confession. But a notebook fell from the sky. It landed right in front of his face. It described a love story. An S-Class Alpha and an S-Class Omega. The Alpha's description matched Julian perfectly. At first, Leo dismissed it as a prank. But small events from the book started happening. He was still unconvinced until one day after class. He went to find Julian for lunch. A girl was confessing her love to him. She said she knew she was not an Omega. Julian's reply was cold and cruel. He said he did not like betas. Any beta. Leo felt like he had been plunged into ice. He remembered a line from the notebook. The protagonist Alpha hated opportunistic betas. He finally accepted his fate. He slowly began to create distance. He became just another subordinate. Julian's indifference to this distance confirmed it. But he still accepted Julian's job offer. He thought just seeing him would be enough. The memory ended there. Leo sighed and finished the script for his video. He uploaded it to his anonymous account. To his surprise, the video went viral. His inbox was flooded with messages. One message stood out from the rest. It was from his junior colleague, Alex. Alex asked why he had been blocked too. He said he wasn't like that jerk. Leo was confused about how he was found. Alex sent several more messages. He said Julian was a tyrant after Leo left. He even yelled at Leo's old office succulent. Leo's hopeful heart grew heavy again. He asked Alex how he found his account. Alex replied quickly that it was the IP address. Something about it felt strange. But Alex changed the subject. He was going on a business trip with Julian. He asked for tips on Julian's pet peeves. Leo started to type a reply. He realized he had no answer. With him, Julian was always easygoing. He just told Alex to bring the right documents. Late that night, the notebook appeared again. It fell onto his face while he was sleeping. He was shocked to see the story had updated. The Omega protagonist had run away. No wonder Julian was on a business trip. He was going to retrieve his runaway mate. Leo stared at the word marked for a long time. He hugged the notebook and let himself grieve. The next day, he went to a furniture store. He ordered new pieces for his condo. On his way home, the thin man blocked him. The man's nose twitched strangely. He asked why he couldn't smell Leo anymore. Leo tried to step around him. The man showed a disgusting smile. He asked if Leo was a single Omega. He accused Leo of trying to seduce him before. Leo called him crazy and said he was a beta. He shoved the man aside and ran home. He had planned to eat at a hot pot place. That was no longer an option. As evening fell, his stomach rumbled. He was about to order food delivery. A heavy pounding came from his door. His body tensed. He quietly walked to the door. He heard a familiar, urgent voice. It was Julian telling him to open the door. Julian was supposed to be chasing his Omega. Leo told him they had nothing to discuss. The reason for his resignation was clear. Julian fell silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was full of hurt. He asked, "What about me? I've loved you for 10 years. Are you just going to leave me?" The words made no sense to Leo. The story said he marked Lucas. Before he could think, Julian spoke again. He accused Leo of rejecting everyone for years. He said he waited patiently for him. He sounded desperate and confused. Leo could not listen to any more. He pulled open the door to argue. He was met with Julian's dark, intense eyes. A chill ran down his spine. Julian grabbed his wrist and entered. The door clicked shut behind them. A rough finger pried his lips apart. "I've caught you, baby." Leo stumbled backward onto the sofa. Julian used the opportunity to pin him down. A hot hand cupped his jaw. Julian's breath was hot against his neck. Do you know what happens to bad betas? They get bullied until they become omegas. The rich scent of amber was intoxicating. It made Leo's head spin. He angrily tried to knee Julian away, but the physical difference was too great. He was completely overpowered. He kicked out again, yelling, "Get off!" His ankle was caught and held. A sharp pain erupted on his neck. "Don't run away." Leo weakly slapped Julian's back. The soft blow felt more like an encouragement. Julian bit down again, harder this time. The scent of amber grew stronger. Leo's consciousness faded into darkness. When he awoke, the room was empty. He saw the red marks all over his neck. It had not been a dream. A knock came at the door. Leo sneered and went to open it. The person outside was not Julian. It was the thin, harassing neighbor. Leo's eyes widened in horror. He tried to slam the door shut. He was a second too late. A pungent chemical odor filled the air. His entire body went limp and weak. He smashed a teacup against the man's head. Blood dripped down the man's face. He lunged forward in a rage. Another hand grabbed the man's hair. He was thrown violently aside. The familiar scent of amber replaced the chemical smell. Leo collapsed to the floor. The last thing he heard was Julian's panicked voice. He was calling for an ambulance. He said Leo was having a secondary transformation. He awoke to a sterile white room. An unbearable heat coursed through him. A sticky moisture covered his entire body. A deep sense of anxiety washed over him. A nurse in full protective gear entered. A cool liquid flowed into his veins. The raging heat was temporarily suppressed. The nurse said he was transforming. She said the transformation was unusually strong. He had two options to manage it. He could endure it with small doses of suppressants, or his alpha could give him a temporary mark. He looked through the glass window. He saw Julian's anxious face. He asked if he could speak to him. The nurse used her phone to make the call. He asked Julian through ragged breaths, "Could he please?" Julian's answer was a sharp, absolute no. He would not mark him. Leo froze, tears welling in his eyes. He hung up the phone without another word. He told the nurse to continue the suppressants. He spent 3 days in a delirious haze. On the fourth evening, Julian was there. He was sitting by the bed, peeling an apple. Leo looked away from him. He told Julian he was fine now. He said Julian could go home. A sharp clatter echoed in the room. The fruit knife had fallen to the floor. Julian's finger was bleeding freely. He gave a small, pained laugh. "Baby, don't send me away." It felt like a calculated act of pity. But Leo found himself softening. He told Julian to go get it treated. Julian nodded and left the room. Leo sighed and lay back down. He needed to think about this mess. A vibration came from the bedside table. It was Julian's phone. 2 messages appeared on the screen. From Lucas. "Where are you?" From Lucas. "You promised to be my alpha." The rest of the message was cut off. Leo fought the urge to touch the phone. He lay back down, his face a mask. How much of Julian's words were true? He decided to end things cleanly. When Julian returned, they would part ways. Julian came back with a bandaged finger. Leo pointed to the chair. He said they needed to talk. Julian obediently sat down. Leo did not know where to begin. Julian seemed to sense his confusion. He offered to explain everything. He swore that he had only ever loved Leo. For 10 years, it had only been Leo. Leo's face flushed. He asked about Lucas. Julian looked confused for a moment. Then a look of realization dawned on him. He explained that Lucas was his brother. his actual biological brother. He was hiding from a possessive alpha. Julian's eyes lit up with excitement. Baby, you misunderstood. You were jealous. Does that mean you like me a little? Leo looked down and said nothing. Julian pulled out his phone. He showed Leo a photo of his family registry. Who keeps a picture of that on their phone? Julian said he was prepared. He wanted it ready for when Leo said yes. Then Leo remembered the rejection. He asked why Julian refused the temporary mark. If he really loved him, why would he refuse? He turned his face away from Julian. Julian gently but firmly turned his head back. His expression was serious. Do you remember fainting at that college dinner? Leo nodded. Julian explained the test results. They showed a slight chance of secondary transformation. The doctors could not predict when. They warned that a mark during transformation is different. It would create an intense, permanent dependency. The marked person would be controlled by pheromones. They could never leave that alpha. Leo stared, speechless. Julian smiled sadly. He admitted he had considered forcing it, but he wanted Leo to love him freely. He apologized for his rough behavior earlier. The memory of the sofa made Leo blush. He quickly changed the subject. He asked about his own supposed rejections. He admitted to the part about saving money, but he never said he wouldn't consider an alpha. Julian just stared at him with wide eyes. A forgotten memory surfaced for Leo. It was a follow-up call from the doctor. He had said he wasn't considering any alpha partner. But that was because of the notebook. Suddenly he remembered. The plot. Julian's actions completely defied it. He grabbed Julian's arm. He told Julian they had to go to his place. He pulled the notebook from a drawer. He told Julian to read the whole thing. Julian looked at him with an amused expression. Baby, is it possible that alpha isn't me? Leo flipped to the first page. It listed the university and program. Julian gently corrected him. There was another S-class alpha. He was in the graduate program. Leo's mouth fell open. Could he be wrong? He mentioned the study abroad and company timelines. Julian explained the other alpha's timeline matched his. He pointed to a page in the book. The alpha loved cilantro. Julian said he was mildly allergic to cilantro. He only ate it because Leo loved it. Leo remembered Julian's neck always getting red. Julian then opened his phone. He started a video call with another CEO. The man's name was Liam Wu. The call connected quickly. Lucas's face flashed on screen for a second. Then Liam appeared, his suit wrinkled. Julian quickly explained the situation. Liam nodded in understanding. He confirmed that he was the alpha from the book. He said his timeline was similar to Julian's, and that he loved cilantro. It all matched up. Leo shrank back, embarrassed. He had misunderstood everything. Julian knelt down on one knee. I love you. This time, can you be with me? Leo fell into his arms. Yes. Can we get married tomorrow? I'll have Alex courier my family registry. So that was his plan all along. But Leo had already wasted 10 years. He did not want to wait any longer. As soon as the documents arrived, they would go. Julian knew they had met 11 years ago. He saw Leo across a crowded hall. When he worked up the courage to approach, he was gone. A classmate said his parents had died. Julian chose to watch over him from afar. He dealt with the cruel rumors. He took care of the greedy relatives. Leo was a strong person. He chose to repeat a year and get tutoring. Julian wanted to be that tutor, but his father forced him into the company. He knew he had to be stronger to protect Leo, so he found a reliable tutor for him instead. They finally reconnected at university. Felt like a gift from heaven. The doctor's call after Leo fainted changed everything. The news of a possible transformation was a risk. He kept it a secret from everyone. He chased away any potential rivals. Leo would stay by his side. He would be Julian's Omega. If he ever tried to run, he would be caught. He would be marked and locked away. And then he actually ran. For a moment, Julian considered all his dark plans. But then he found Leo's anonymous videos. He saw the truth of his feelings. He tracked him down. The misunderstanding was finally resolved. Everything was just as it should be.